It is Tuesday, September 23rd, and I will call this meeting of the City of Stoughton City Council Finance Committee to order. So first roll call, looks like everybody's here except Adrian. I didn't get an email or anything, so yeah. So we do have a quorum, and I can certify that we are in compliance with open meetings law. Any public comments or communications from committee members? All right, hearing none, the next item on the agenda is communications and presentations, and it looks like update on True by Hilton room tax collection.
So we did send the letter and invoices out by certified mail. They did sign for it. We haven't heard anything else. I believe, Mayor, did you mention earlier today that we're not the only ones with this problem? So that's where it's at right now.
Okay, thank you, I guess. Next item is approval for the minutes from 9/9/2025. Do we have any motion for approval?
I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any changes, edits, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And abstain. All right, perfect. So 4 ayes and an abstain. Next item is discussion and possible action regarding the 2026 operating budget. So Director Trebatowski, is that you?
That is me. So I'm going to present where we are at this time. And then the real focus here is to determine whether we're cutting or if we're going to levy up to the max. And so we'll go through that. If we want to go to the next slide. So as a kind of more of a recap, I presented on the levy limits and expenditure restraint back in August. So the net new construction was at 3.583%, or just under 300,000. The expenditure restraint, as I explained, we can go up to that amount and still receive our payment in 2027. That amount is an inflation factor of CPI, and then our net new construction, 60% of that, or a max of 2. So at that time, we're estimating about 4.6%. With that, that's an additional almost 295,000. So those combined, we're looking at 592,000 almost. And if we stay within that, we could receive our expenditure restraint payment in 2027. So we go to the next slide. Where we're at currently with the budget, with our total tax levy of just over 13 million. In the operational tax levy, it's at 7.5. We'll see a different number later, but this does include the expenditure restraint payment of 306,000 in the general fund at this time. So with that, if we stuck to our net new construction levy increase amount, we are over by almost 535,000. If we go up to that expenditure restraint amount, we are still over almost 241,000. So with the 13 million, if we go to the next slide, looking at an average residential home, they would see a decrease of approximately $59 on an equalized basis at that 13 million amount. So if we go to the next slide, if we look at levying up to somewhere up to our max capacity, this is estimated at the time, where we're at currently is 13.3 million, because we have to take out that expenditure restraint payment, because I would recommend moving that to the capital as we've discussed before, because otherwise, moving into the next year, you're having to make up that amount. So we could max levy capacity at almost 13.9 million, leaving almost 597,000 of capacity. Note that this budget doesn't include any new positions or any wage adjustments in it right now. Looking at what that would do to an average residential home, if we go to the next slide, it would be over, for a $350,000 home, it'd be just over $100 for the year. So this is kind of numbers you've seen before when I did the presentation, but just putting it into where we are currently at our budget at this point. If we go to the next slide, we'll discuss some highlights of the budget right now. Some positives, we did include a 3% increase for all employees. That was about $231,000 for just the levy portion. So some employees are paid out of stormwater, or there's the EMS fund. So just the levy portion is about $231,000. Positive, we still have levy capacity available. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just know there are some other increases in revenues that we were able to include, including some admin fees, either increasing or adding. Shared revenues, some increases there. And then municipal court has seen higher collections than in the past, and so they're actually to over collect them what their expenditures are. So a negative almost $4,300 on that. Again, we haven't included any positions or wage adjustments included at this time. We are going to be discussing that tomorrow, and it's going to personnel October 4th. As with all budget seasons, there are many challenges that we face. The biggest known one, general transportation aid. We saw a decrease because of that 6-year average and the public works building falling off. Right now we have a 10% increase to health insurance, or approximately an increase of $138,000. HR is at 14%, but we're hopeful for a 10% or better. So some other decreases in revenues from the prior year. So some things were added in the 2025 budget that are being removed. There was some RDA funds that was kind of just allocated, and then some offsetting revenues for the planning from developers. We haven't seen that amount, so there's not the offset of that, so we are removing that. There was also the one-time transfer of ARPA interest funds to help offset revenues and levy increase. So that is not included, and we're reducing interest by $50,000. There are some increases in expenditures. I'm just going to highlight a few. With us doing payroll, we have discovered quite a few things. One item is the Public Works has a standby pay that hasn't been budgeted in the past, so we're including that in this year's budget. The attorney fees, with the increase that was approved in rates, along with additional use of the city attorney, we're projecting a $25,000 increase for the city attorney line. And then on the next page, shared ride services. I put what 2024 was at for budget. It was reduced in 2025, and we're seeing that go back up. We're projecting a deficit of like $53,000. So I'm not entirely sure of the rationale behind that, unless we expected lower usage of the service, but we increased that back up. Considering the loss of the expenditure restraint program for 2027, this year we received about $229,000. 2026 is at $306,000. Again, as I said, if we forego that, we'd put it in the capital fund. We're proposing not to use fund balance. I know it was used to adhere to levy limits in 2025. And that, again, is just building that deficit, trying to make up for that later unless you're using it for a one-time expense. So we're not proposing to use any fund balance because we have levy capacity available. I'm just going to hit on some of the other funds quickly.
Before you
Go ahead.
do on the shared ride, I think we were anticipating some drop in user. They had difficulties with staffing. I think they're doing better now, but that's been an ebb and flow for them. And then I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, where we did our rate increase. So that's something we could look at. We'd probably have to look at our agreement with them, but I believe that we could if we chose to. Obviously, people would be impacted if we did.
Yep. Looking at our sanitation fund, so John's disposal rate increase is 2.8%, which is the CPIU. They came in higher. Brett was able to talk to them about what number they're using, and so it's agreed upon now for the 2.8%. So we recommend an increase of about $5.35 per year. So we're committing to use a very small portion of fund balance. This year, or for the 2026 budget, just about $200. Last year it was just over $9,000, and I just want to caution with that, noting that as of 12/31/2024, the fund balance was at 5.66% of the 2025 budgeted. Expenditures, our policy is to be between 8 and 15%. So trying to minimize that use of fund balance and hope to see it rise. This is going to the Public Works Committee this Thursday. There is a performance bond clause in the requirement in the contract that we're not sure why it is in there. Nobody else has it. Confirmed with HR Risk Management about removing that. The next fund, looking at stormwater.
And just to add on John's, I think 2.8 is the max they can go, otherwise we'd have to bid it out. Is that?
In the contract, then we could, have other services like cancel with them. So while we have a 4 or 5 year contract, if they go above that, we could cancel with them and go somewhere else.
Yeah, so, and we like the service they provide, and it sounds like they were willing to work with us to get that in a position where we wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, it was a number that he explained, John's in an email about what number they were looking at for CPIU, a class 1 versus just the general CPIU for the Midwest region. Stormwater, we're not looking to increase for 2026. I would like more time to evaluate this. Last year it was discussed about a high fund balance, but we're looking into the unspent bond proceeds. So we're going through 2023, 2024, and 2025 and trying to do a better job of tracking that, and I want to see where that's at. And possibly maybe not issue debt in the future. However, what Ellers has planned for us is not having principal and interest, delaying that to help keep us above that one-time coverage. The next.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we talked about is we did a cost allocation study last year, and it suggested that there was an opportunity for stormwater, but I think you decided that we're going to do another one next year.
Yep, so in the 2026 budget, having stormwater, they weren't contributing any admin fees to help offset costs of finance, HR, where EMS does, the utilities does, but stormwater wasn't. The cost allocation from 2023 or through, based off of 2023 information, is a lot higher, but we went at 40,000. So that's where the EMS is going to be at. So we're making stormwater. And then when we go through this process again and truly evaluate if the numbers that we're in 2023, based off of 2023 are good, or if there's adjustments that need to be made, and then we'll look at what the admin fees should be for 2027. For EMS, they're proposing an increase to fees. This is going to public safety tomorrow. So there's a chart of the increase proposed, so doing step increases. I will note that it was supposed to happen for 2025, so there's a higher one for 2026, kind of catching up from not having it done in 2025, and additional funds needed as they are looking to change their pay structure. So currently it's on a per call basis of $30 per call, and then changing it to hourly. So the increase in wages from the 2025 budget for 2026 is about $145,000.
And this would come out of their fund?
Yes.
Okay, so the EMS has the enterprise fund. And then the other thing we kind of learned is on the reimbursement side, it actually costs us more to transport than we get reimbursed by Medicaid. So that's a concern, because I think it was 73% of our transports are Medicaid recipients. So we're a little bit upside down on that. I don't know if we're going to get any help from the federal government, but we're certainly going to have conversations with them about that, because it's not getting the job done, and we have to provide the service somehow. And if they're not willing to raise our reimbursement, it's just going to continue to get worse.
I may be getting ahead, but I'm wondering if the revenues increase is actually realistic, because even though, having been in healthcare, and I think you know this, Ozzy, that sometimes you increase the revenue, but that doesn't mean that the fees that you get from Medicaid. And so I guess I just want to be, I'm not sure if raising the fees is going to necessarily result in more dollars.
So when actually Nicole Marie did the analysis and used run call information, historical, and then we do an offset because of the Medicaid deduction.
So when I did the analysis back in January, we had about a 37% collection rate on what we bill out. And so that's what we used when we were projecting what the max revenue, with the numbers that you see there, be increasing. When we look at where we're actually at for the year for what we budgeted last year, we're way ahead. We only budgeted $1.9 million in ambulance revenue for 2025, and we're already close to $1.5 million. And so with this rate increase, we don't expect to see, the full value of that, but we've kind of taken that into account with the insurance discounts and the Medicare issue, like Mayor mentioned.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, then the next slide is next step. So we want to know how to move forward if we're looking to go up to the expenditure restraint amount and need to look at cutting. If you're comfortable exceeding that, forgoing the expenditure restraint payment in 2027. So we have direction where to go. Again, as I've mentioned, there was no position added in the numbers that we saw tonight. And then if there's any other changes that you would like to see. If you want to go to the max levy one, just so we're looking at that.
Next one.
There you go. So again, that gives us additional capacity, almost 597,000. If you go back 2 slides, what we would need to cut if we go up to the expenditure restraint is the 241,000.
I'm not sure where that would come from.
We aren't either. So I think, you know, what Director Trepetowski's laid out to basically take the ERP and throw it in the CIP seems like the best option to me. It gives us the ability to take care of our employees and also look at our staffing requests. If we're giving up the ERP, but we're gaining more on the back end by doing that, and then if we were in a position 1 year where we didn't grow, we could always get back with it if that's the best option at that time. And really, the thing about the staffing requests is, you know, we have needs to accommodate the growth, and personnel has a process that they go through. The department heads submit their additional staffing requests. Finance helps cost them out, and then at the personnel committee, they prioritize the need, and then ultimately it's up to me to figure out if I'm going to follow the recommendation or if I'm going to do something a little bit different than that and put that into the budget. And then when the budget is presented to the full council, at that point, there's always an opportunity to make amendments. I would prefer, you know, to have that all vetted out before that, so we're not trying to do it on the fly, because when you start making changes at the actual budget meeting, especially if you're adding stuff, that means you have to reduce in another area to make up for it in order to have a balanced budget. But we do kind of have the process for evaluating those budget requests. And there's a worksheet that's filled out that if you look in the personnel packet, you'll be seeing them when we have our next meeting. But I think this lays it out in a way, at least for me, I don't know about you all, that it's kind of easy for me to follow and understand it. I don't know. I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Could you remind me where this would put us in terms of ERP for future budget years?
If we would stay within the percentage allowed for, we would get it back in 2028. So it's foregoing it for a year as long as in the future we're staying
Okay.
within that.
That's what I remembered, but I didn't have a note.
The other thing we're looking at too is we're trying to piece together kind of at least a 5-year plan. I don't know if it pays to go beyond that. We do have a TIF district that's scheduled to close at the end of 26. We could extend that for a year and capture some more increment, which we could use part of that for affordable housing initiatives. So let's say we close that in 27. Then at 27, what happens is the value of that TIF goes up because the base amount was locked in from when that TIF district was created. And when we close it, that base amount jumps. So that's going to give us a bump at that point for other additional staffing or shortfalls that we might have in that year. And I'm hoping that by putting together this plan that we can, as much as we can, avoid, you know, going to a future referendum for operations like we're seeing in a lot of other municipalities. If something doesn't give it to state level, I feel like everybody's going to be there at some point, but what we're trying to do is put that off as long as we can while trying to maintain the services and maintain our staff. So that's kind of the balancing act we're trying to play right now. You know, we're trying to minimize the impact to the taxpayers as much as we can, but recognizing we still need to address our needs to maintain that level of services.
Other questions?
That one was just sort of the difficult one. Like, you know, I know that when we're looking at this per, you know, if it would be $100 in a year on taxes for houses, and yes, that comes down to a little bit less than $10 a month, but they're getting well, everybody's getting squeezed on all sides. So the hard part is we got to think about what everybody, you know, what this is going to mean to the homeowners as well. And again, I know it's it seems like it would be a small amount, but it may be significant for some. Because we've had plenty of our chatter about affordable housing and all those sorts of things online about that, and people are having to go out to the next level out in order to find affordability on there. So, this is where we're really trying to thread that needle in between. We need to keep the services where they are, because if those drop off, that would be worse. But also if we have people leaving and we don't have to have the services. Big circle.
To that point, Mayor, I know that you typically annually present kind of a where we are in terms of growth. What's our projected growth in terms of population, give or take?
So the population. A couple hundred people to the good and to the negative, even though we've had more homes. And the theory there would be, if that's true, it's because the families that are moving in aren't as large as the ones that are moving out. I did have a meeting a couple weeks ago with cities and villages, and CARPC, Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, has put together and released projections for Dane County that came out yesterday, and their projections show that Dane County, their projections going up to 2050 were low. We're actually exceeding them. They haven't released the individual municipalities yet. I got a little bit of a sneak preview, and it looks like their numbers are higher for Stoughton than the census is projecting at this point. And I can tell you that as far as building permits, the planning department forwarded us the Dane County building permits last week, and we had 73 permits pulled, and I think last year at this time we had 56. Last year was a record year. And then you also have to include in commercial, but we're gonna have STI in there, and the car washes and a couple others that hopefully will be completed by the end of the year, including the one apartment at 51 West. So we think we're gonna have another good net new construction for the year that we're in now, going into next year. I don't know if it's gonna equate into population. Dr. Keyser reported out they had their third Friday count for the school district, whatever the third Friday was in the last week or so. And we haven't seen those numbers yet for enrollment. Initially, I was told they were going to be down, but how much, I don't know. We're hoping to at least flatten the curve. I think last year they were down 30 students, and the year before that they were up 10. So I'm hoping it's kind of within that range, but I don't know yet. So it feels like even though we're growing a lot, it may or may not actually be adding to the total population. I can tell you that one thing that is happening though, because with all the conversations going on, I've been doing a little research. Our average medium income in Stoughton last year went up over 7%. So the families that are moving in here have more, household income than the ones that were either here or are moving out. I assume it's because the new houses that are being built, the families that are moving in there have to have more money, because I don't know how else they'd be making them payments, because they're really expensive. We are concerned about the affordable housing. We do have the Riverfront project going now. We're still working with JT Klein. We're hoping to find out in October whether or not that's going to move forward in the spring. There are no Section 8 vouchers available right now. So if you're, the difference between the Section 42 and the Section 8 is the Section 8 is a voucher program for the tenants, and it's based on their individual wages. The Section 42 is a tax credit that the developer gets, and the rent is based on the area median income, which, so if the median income is here, but you're below that, you qualify for a Section 8 voucher. The problem is there's none available. And they have the waiting list is closed right now. You can't even get on a waiting list here in Dane County for that. So that's really the struggle with the Section 8, and we have nothing to do with that. I think those are all federal programs through HUD. So that's the struggle on the affordable housing scene, and I could probably talk another hour on that alone, but that's probably enough to at least give you an indication of what's going on.
The reason I asked the question is if we do max out to the revenue limit and we're looking at about $103, excuse me, increase, that's about 4.3%. You said CPIU is about 2.8. So in my mind, combining CPIU and population growth gives you a number that is very reasonable in terms of an amount of an increase. And we can see around us that we're growing. We've got a lot of houses, we've got a lot of development. As much as it, pains to think about that for a 1 year, we don't want to get behind on that and try to play catch up. If we suddenly find our cost of services starts to really grow.
Yeah, I think the concern is if we leave the money on the table, then we'll never be able to get it back. And our needs are going to continue to be there, if not even more. So, we're trying to be sensitive to both. It's a struggle. We're hoping that at some point the state of Wisconsin will get serious about being so heavily reliant on property taxes, not only for the city, but for the school district. And I know the county relies on them heavily too, and the county's got a $31 million structural deficit that they're trying to fill right now. So they're looking at, no increases, more contribution to health care. Sun Prairie is looking at a referendum. They're telling me if it fails, they're laying off 34 people. So we don't want to overextend ourselves either, because you don't want to be in a position where you're hiring people and then a year or two later you're laying them off. So that's the other thing we're trying to balance, to be fair to our staff.
So are we looking for direction?
I think Lisa is.
I mean, it's the mayor's budget. He is in favor, I believe, of going the route of going up to somewhere up to the max. But if this is going to be contentious and not favored, and if we're going to end up cutting, I mean, it's better to know now than when we're further along with positions. And
I just can't see a scenario where we could make the cuts and maintain the services, and what has been laid out here puts us in a position where we don't have to do that. In fact, I think it puts us in a position where we can actually fill needs. We do have a lot of needs. Our people are working really hard, and they'll continue to work hard if we add staffing. And I also feel like the growth is going to continue. I'd feel a little differently if the last year or two was an anomaly, but it feels like it's going to continue to grow, and it takes people to do that. So, and hopefully it'll continue to create opportunities for everybody for housing, and we'll continue to, to work on that as well.
So recognizing we have other agenda items and it's 25-2. Does anybody want to voice strong support for trying to find areas to cut as opposed to moving towards the 1 year maxing as is proposed here?
Remind me again, if we do follow the max, what it would be the average home cost. Can you go back to that slide again?
Right there.
be just over like 103 for a $350,000 home.
To consider to the schools, what are they going to go 10%?
That's the suggestion.
That's what I read in the.
Yeah. And I know at least one of the townships did their assessments, and they hadn't done them for a number of years. They're looking at a huge increase there, at least in their property values. Now, I don't know what it'll equate to, for their their property taxes. That's could be a different story. It depends on how they budget down there. But you know, everything's going up, you know, and the frustrating thing for me is, you know, part of it, a lot of it's beyond our control. The interest rates, we borrow money, so we pay more interest. Even things like the tariff, when we're buying vehicles, doing works on our buildings, that's costing us more money, so our borrowing is going up because of decisions that we don't make, other than the fact that we know we need to replace roofs and we need to put HVAC units on it, and we're pushing to get as much solar on our buildings as we can, but all those costs are going up, you know, and the saving grace on the solar is the tax credit deal, so we're going to ride that wave as far as we can take it, because that'll actually save us some money on our operations costs. And those numbers, I think after next year we'll have a better idea of what that actual savings is, and we can probably budget our utility costs a little bit more aggressively then at that point. But I can't see it, you know, if we had to cut, what was it, $240,000, that's like, at least, that's like 3 full-time positions, you know, basically. And I don't know how we would do that. And, you know, we're looking, you know, to hopefully add that many, depending on, you know, how the rankings come out, because some of them are full-time positions and some of them are currently part-time positions that they would want additional hours for.
Health insurance, you're looking at, what, 14%? I'll be surprised if you get it for that, but hopefully we can.
And what's in the budget numbers right now is only a 10%, so we're being hopeful that.
Yeah, I think you're being extremely hopeful, but
Yeah, we might not have as much as we hope to, or we may have to make some changes in our policy in order to get that 10%. AJ's still working on that.
Yeah, I had heard nationwide averages around 11 to 12%
Yeah.
increases.
So yeah, we're looking for a recommendation. This isn't the final whack at it. Like I said, I have to, at the end of the day, I have to present the budget to the council. The numbers could change a little bit depending on what we do and the staffing. And then, you know, the council ultimately can approve it, deny it, or look to amend it. But we need at least a decision so we can, you know, move the process forward.
I don't know if you need a motion, but I would, if so, make a motion to move forward with the recommended path with going up to the, as suggested.
Going to our levy limit for the year.
Yep.
Okay, so Lisa has recommended that. Do we need to, I mean, it's not a formal motion, but
You're looking for a recommendation or direction?
Direction, I mean, if. Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down on Lisa's motion.
Thank you.
Is discussion and possible action regarding Sustainable Stoughton Compost Initiative request. And we have that in our packet.
I think we should more call this an invoice versus a request. So the funding has been approved for the food composting program, the use of the ARPA interest dollars. This is merely a proposal / invoice for expending some of those funds. And Brett, I don't know if you want to chime in at all. I think the idea is just to be transparent about where that food composting money is going. So this is basically how the program will be set up. There's a little bit of preliminary research that Sustainable Stoughton would conduct, to make sure that the program is comprehensive and is the best, most efficient utilization of the funds as the composting program rolls out over the next 1 to 2 years.
So I had a question about the timeline, because this is ARPA funds, so I had two questions, actually. First one for, well, probably Lisa. This can be spent through, it has to be allocated in 25, spent by 26?
The money for this portion is interest earnings, so it's not the December 31st, 2026
Okay.
required deadline.
So a follow-up question is just about the date. So I'm confused about whether or not, because August 1st has already passed. So did some of this already happen? So would the dates actually be accurate to be August through December of 26, and this is the plan for 26?
Yeah, the date I think was a hopeful, this is as early as we could get started on this. But it will start as soon as they have the okay that they will receive these funds for this work.
Yeah, I think if we approved it, they would go October 1st if.
Get going on it.
Mhm.
So I feel like the money was already approved, right? In the
Correct.
past.
There's 28,000.
So I feel like as long as, when you provide the invoices when the work is completed and it adds up to 28,000, we should be good, right?
Yes.
So I mean, this is nice because we know where it's going, but I don't know if we need to approve anything. The money's already been approved. And then the question would be is, what do you need in order to do reimbursement? You would need an actual invoice?
Well, this would be the documentation that we would use.
So-
Noting that it, I guess, came through finance, so if you want to make a motion, that's fine, that'd be great. We have the minutes that this was approved.
So like my question
The
would be.
funds are approved, so.
For the budget, the project manager, is that Becker, or who's the project manager?
I believe the project manager will be Stephanie Solberg.
Okay, so we would probably need an invoice or something from Stephanie to pay, right?
Is the point that they're receiving these funds in advance of?
I'm not sure that they're requesting the funds in advance. I think they are just wanting to know that they
It's
have
available.
the okay to conduct
So
the work and
would they be
bill.
submitting then separate request for payment, or?
I think only if you required that documentation from them.
I guess to the mayor's point, my perception would, excuse me, sorry, my perception would be, this gives us an outline of anticipated uses, and provided, if we kind of approve that, provided that the expenditures don't exceed 28,000 and are within this list of uses, I think that invoices going to finance for the payment to show what it was spent on, so there's kind of that second look, so to speak. That seems to be a logical step for us. Lisa?
I guess I would be interested, whatever that looks like, in future reporting, because I do recall another group who shall remain nameless who requested money, and I've still never seen a report ever, and I have no idea. It is not Sustainable Stoughton at all. So, because I am really interested. I think this is a fabulous program, but I'd really like to know, like, when can the community actually, when might there be a place to drop off, and how so what's the results, and what do we do about it? And so I guess I would like some sort of invoicing and reports about what's going on and now what. So this would, but I like I like the whole idea. I think it's fabulous. But just getting some sort of feedback, and I don't know if that's a finance or council or other environment to do that.
If that's the way you would like to see it done, otherwise we can use this if you're comfortable and approve it as the invoice for payment to them. But if you would rather they need to submit invoice for a report of what's been happening before funds, that's
No, it's more about, I'm less concerned about the invoices and more but just about like what's going on. Like, let us know when, whether that's, whatever's realistic, whether that's in 3 months or 5 months or whatever, what's going on and what you find out and what's happening.
So they will be providing a deliverable of a cost-benefit analysis for the events, residential, restaurants, and schools. And the other deliverable is an implementation plan for sort of the city community-based programming that would then utilize the rest of the approved funds. So we will have some deliverables for this portion, at least, and go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you.
I have a question. I think this program is wonderful, but what do we do when the money runs out? Didn't they do this in Madison and it failed because there was no more money? Or at the county level? I mean, I think it's wonderful, and have you contacted the hospital? Because there's a lot of waste there too that I'm sure they would work with you.
So, as far as I'm aware, council approved a finite amount of food composting programmatic spending from the ARPA interest in 2024. And this is to start setting up a program. When I was meeting with department directors during the sustainability plan finalization, I did speak to the director of public works who had set up a school program at a former city, which no longer is in operation, probably for similar reasons. But the idea here is to start bringing more community awareness to the importance of food composting, and hopefully kind of long-term start building a little bit more education toward a citywide composting program that would become part of a citywide service. We're a ways out from that, but this is a start, at least in that direction. But yeah, absolutely, it will run out.
Thank you. Brad, I think you had something, and then I just want to recognize that time. We have 2 time-sensitive items, too.
I mean, you can just bypass it. I was just going to say about like invoicing and that, like instead of having this one as the invoicing as they get their plan in, it would be better just to have them invoice in, bill in as they do the work. And then once we get through the deliverables portion of it, then we can maybe invoice the rest of it out. Is that clear, or is that muddier?
that, as long as that's clear to you for what they need to do to receive the funds. Okay.
Okay. Next 2 items are time sensitive. We have discussion and possible action regarding the application for TIF request from the Alexander Company Incorporated.
So this first item is just the application. It was requested that just the application come through, and that's how the process will be moving forward. The application was provided as part of the approval for the perform analysis. So this is just the application itself. And the policy is behind it, the updated policy.
Questions on this? Who's that?
Sorry,
Rick?
this is Rick. Yeah. Hey, everyone. So I guess this is somewhat related to the next item. I mean, we had the closed session option for both items. The agreement for tonight has a total value, so that's including all interest payments and future payments to the developer of $6.5 million. So it's not like we have an annual payment schedule, it's just whatever increment is generated. They are getting, I forgot the percentage now, I think it's 90%. Yeah, 90% of excess tax increment. So as the project develops and as they reach occupancy, we would issue the municipal revenue obligation in the amount of $6.5 million, and then they would get 90% of the annual increment until that amount is paid off. So it may not be exactly what's in the application, but I think we're just talking about, oh, Shane's online. He's better at explaining this than I am. Sorry.
Shane?
Hello, everyone. Shane Woodline with Ellers. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, there's 2 items on the agenda tonight related to this. I do have a presentation. I'm happy to go through that if you want to spend the time on that. It's a very short deck. It goes through, our analysis, and which has been presented to the council a couple of times at this point. And so tonight we can review that, or we can take how much time you guys want tonight.
Lisa?
So is it, given we have minutes, do we need to, because there are 2 members who wouldn't be in the council meeting, because I will have some questions that I'm guessing would need to be in closed session. So if it's required that we need to vote on this or make a recommendation in finance, then I don't know if we need to go into closed session, but we're probably not going to be done at 7.
If we run over, we run over. We'll just let people know.
Okay.
Okay. So Lisa, are you proposing we go into closed session?
I don't know if there's anything, I guess, what do y'all think? Are there things that we should talk about first in open session based on the attorney or Eller's recommendation, or should we just go into closed session if that's the plan?
Yeah, Rick, do you have any recommendation?
It's, I guess, completely up to the committee if they feel like a closed session is required to ask questions and get the answers that they want to make a recommendation. One other thing I want to highlight about the agreement is we have a development agreement with the developer already, and this is more of the tax increment financing portion of the agreement. So it requires them to implement some of the sustainable features that are put in their TIF application. But one other thing I want to highlight is the last agreement, the development agreement that we have with the developer, says that they would be responsible for the city's design costs of the public improvements that the city is going to be building. This modifies that slightly because the developer had already put in costs to have JSD design public improvements, and they are basically saying if we have Strand do the work, they don't want to pay anything in excess of what their original contract with JSD was going to be. So that's kind of a somewhat amendment to what the previous agreement between the city and the developer have, but I think that's one potential thing to also discuss just on the financial terms of this.
So the memo that I saw earlier, was that just in the council packet?
That's in the finance packet as well.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing that because I did ask a specific question, but you'd recommended that I should save that for a closed session when I emailed you earlier. So if that's the case.
So it's the resolution and then the memo and then the agreement all in one PDF.
Okay.
So then, Lisa, you probably want to ask the question so that finance can
I was
should we
told
go
I
into
needed to
closed
ask in
session?
closed session, so
Well,
I guess.
You can ask it, but we might not answer it until Rick gives an opinion. Is that okay, Rick, or should we just go into closed
Yeah,
session?
she can, yeah, that's fine.
I had just asked what the developer's rate of return was projected.
Rick, do you feel like, should we go into closed session for that, Rick, or before answering?
I guess that might be better in closed session.
Okay.
Just before we do a quick question, Shane, is that rate of return, is there like a WIDA guideline for that?
For part of it, there is. This project is more complicated than a normal tax credit project because it includes market rate units and cash equity. And so the answer is a little bit more complicated than a normal tax credit project or a normal market rate project.
What happens if we wait till the next meeting? Does this happen?
They have to get their WIDA tax credit application submitted, so that's, I mean, we can go to closed session if we run late into council, we'll just start council when we're ready.
Okay. Does somebody want to read the verbiage, or do you want me to read it?
Either way, I'll go ahead. The committee may meet in closed session per state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The committee may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in the closed session, and I so move.
All right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Reeves, a second by President Schumacher, and we need a roll call. So, do you just want me to call it, or? Okay, so Alder Schumacher,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Doom, Dino.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are all in favor. So we'll close the doors.
All right, they're ready.
All right, so the question before us is the two questions before us are the application for tax incremental financing request, and then a resolution which would have an amendment to recommend approval with removal of the city cap for design costs.
All right, so I will make a motion on the first portion of that, item number 9, for tax incremental financing application.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Schumacher, or President Schumacher, and a second by,
I think we just need a motion on the resolution. Because the resolution has the agreement that includes the tip. So it would just be a motion to approve the resolution with the amendment to the agreement to remove the cap.
okay, we don't need anything
We
on
don't.
the application.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
So
Then,
let's-
let me rephrase that as a motion for the resolution on the finance agreement with the
With
amended
the-
language.
with the amended language. Okay, so a motion on the table from President Schumacher. And a second by Committee Member Doom. Any further questions or discussions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Okay, we will recommend that to council. The remaining item is reports, treasurer reports.
Those can wait.
Okay. And then we have future agenda items. If we need to add anything else, we can reach out, I suppose.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? We're adjourned.